Welcome to The Practical Intuitive, where each Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern, where host Robin Fritz explores mind, body, and spirit for the real world. Because we are all intuitives and healers, and we must all learn to love ourselves and live that love every day. Robin is a trained and certified intuitive and spiritual consultant and hypnotherapist with an international practice based in Seattle, Washington. As the Practical Intuitive, she covers personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice. It's all here. Readings, healings, and funny, warm, thought-provoking conversations. It's Robin Fritz, the Practical Intuitive, helping you mastermind body and spirit for the real world. No ifs, ands, buts, or BS ever.
Welcome to the Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz, and welcome to the first live show of 2019. This year I have a lot of interesting things planned for our audience, and all in support of your own innate intuitive and healing abilities. Yes, I work as a professional intuitive, but I am out there supporting everyone in developing their own skills. We all have them, and they're really essential to not just living a balanced life, but keeping ahead of what's going on in our busy world. So we have a lot going on for you today, and in a moment I will be introducing my special guest, Dr. Julia Mossbridge, whose book, The Premonition Code, is an exploration of one area of intuitive development. So, the Premonition Code and how can precognition change your life? So, we're going to talk about that a little bit coming up here. But first, as in every week, as we get into the show, I want to first invite you to call in with questions for Dr. Mossbridge about premonition, what your curiosity is. You're welcome to call in and chat with us. That number is 202-570-7057. And if you're shy, which I know is a problem for a lot of us, you can email me a question. I can forward it to her after the show. And you are certainly, on days when I don't have guests, you're certainly welcome to call in and get a quick intuitive insight into an issue of your own. But now, as we get into the show, I want to get us all grounded and balanced in the space with my crystal partner, Fallon. Fallon is a citrine Lemurian quartz, and I don't claim to know everything about the world, so I don't know everything about that. I just know that we work together, and it matters. And so in this show and in all of my work, we are connected to Fallon's energy as an ancient crystal, a power healer. Yes, all crystals are ancient. Well, most of them, except those created in labs. But Fallon is unique in his energy signature, so he's very poised here for you to connect with him and then connect to your own intuitive and healing abilities that way. So connect with him however your intuition works most strongly. Seeing pictures, hearing him chat with you, feeling his energy, or simply knowing that you're connected. So to get grounded and balanced in the space with us, take your attention to the top of your head. And as we breathe down from the top of your head to the bottom of our feet, just let the cares of the day wash away. So you're settled here in your chair with us, and you can give this hour your full attention and just let everything else melt away, releasing the cares of the day. So breathing down from the top of your head, down your face, your shoulders, your chest, your hips, your knees, and your feet. At top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And now reversing that, breathing up from your feet, past your knees, your hips, your chest, your shoulders, your face, and the top of your head. Just imagine those blocks clearing away, and you're wide open and ready for this fascinating conversation we're about to have. So today, my special guest is Dr. Julia Mossbridge. She's a futurist trained in cognitive neuroscience. a fellow at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and a visiting scholar at Northwestern University in the Department of Psychology. She's a co-author of Transcendent Mind, one of the first academic books to examine paranormal experiences. So her research is on precognition and the possibility of time travel. And the book we're talking about today, and her work and her insights, is a book she co-authored with Theresa Cheung. It's called The Premonition Code, The Science of Precognition, How Sensing the Future Can Change Your Life. Topic right up our alley, right? So the most common intuitive skill we all have is precognition, the ability to receive accurate information about future events. So what does that mean to us for our ideas of time, how we live our lives, what's going on in the world? Dr. Mossbridge has some interesting ideas. So Julia, welcome to my show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Robin. And I love connecting with that crystal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
I love connecting with that crystal.
Oh, yes. Pretty amazing. Fallon has had his own history of misunderstandings in the world, and apparently the Japanese have a great love of very large crystals, but Fallon kept getting kicked out of Japan, getting kicked out of Hawaii, getting kicked out of wherever he was, and then they went and turned him into a crystal ball. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm an MBA. I have multiple degrees, and my partner's a crystal ball. And I'm like, get over yourself, Robin. So I did. Most of the time. But it's just part of getting to know the world, right, Julia? And there are more things out there than we have any idea of. So let's talk about premonition. Okay, so kind of tried to set the stage here for talking about, really how can we tap our intuition, tap our healing abilities to lead better lives. And most of us aren't doing that. A lot of people say, oh, I wish I had your gifts. And I keep saying it's not a gift. It's just a skill set. Don't ask me to change the oil in my car. I'm not that skilled. Everyone has a skill set, but we also have basic ability. So what do you mean by premonition? Let's talk about that. And premonition, precognition, how do those two terms come together? And how do you distinguish that from intuition?
Yeah. So Theresa and I wanted to call the book Premonition Code, partly because she's really good at marketing and she thought it sounded cool. Yeah. And I agreed because I'm not as good at marketing as she is.
Yeah, it is a good term. Yep.
It's a cool name. And it sounded better than Precognition Code because precognition is really more of the scientific word for what people colloquially call premonition. So a premonition can be, so premonition comes from like pre, which is before, and monere, which means to warn. And originally they were always negative. People would say, oh, I had a premonition, someone died. But now people use it colloquially to mean anything positive or negative, any kind of experience. Like, oh, I had a premonition I'd win that raffle. So
knowing what's coming.
Right. So and we just thought it was sounded cooler than Precognition Code, and it's more
easier to say.
It's more accessible. We're trying to talk with a non-academic audience,
That's right.
So,
that's right.
So that's where
it's
we're
perfect.
Coming from. Precognition. Yeah, and then precognition is the scientific version of that. And then I see intuition as the umbrella term. So the umbrella is intuition, and in your intuitive faculties, you have precognitive abilities and you have non-precognitive abilities. So you have like subconscious processing of subliminal information.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I thinking all the way back to 9/11. And let's see, 9/11 happened in September of 2001. And in February of 2001, my Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, laid-back little 20-pound dog, was curling up for a nap, leaped straight up in the air, barking and snapping and pulling on my jeans. And 2 minutes later, Seattle was rocked by a 6.8 earthquake. Okay, so she got us out of the house ahead of a major earthquake. And that was a turning point for me, because when I looked at that afterwards, after we picked up the rubble, and kind of figured out that the house was intact and we were going to live through it, I realized she was aware that there's more going on in the world than humans know. That my dog actually knew the earthquake was coming. And of course, you can talk about feeling the bright vibrations ahead of time. But for me, it was the analytical, skeptical person actually going, okay, there's something more going on in the world, and I need to find out what that is. And so premonition and intuition and energy healing and all of that started with that basic event in my life. And so months later, when 9/11 occurred, which is for Americans a seminal event, there were a lot of people who were talking about having dreams of a tall building on fire and people falling out of the building. And have you researched that aspect of it, or is that too prominent for research?
Oh, I don't know what you mean by too prominent for research.
Well, that it's just so much in the mindset of people that their feelings about this subject are coloring their actual experience.
Oh, well, that's okay. So let's just break down some of the different ways you can research precognition. No, I haven't.
Cool. Okay.
The 9/11 stuff. Yeah, but let's break it down a little bit. So in order to research precognition, there's a couple ways you could do it. One is you could do some kind of questionnaires or extended interviews with people who have experiences and learn about the nature of these experiences sort of in the wild, right? Out there, not in the lab, but just as people live their lives. And that's generally not what I do. I'm interested in that, but that's not what I was trained to do. I was trained to have people come into the lab or to build experiments online that they could complete at home.
Okay.
That ask them to determine whether they can anticipate future events that are selected by a random number generator. Because no matter how many times I hear stories about 9/11 or I have my own precognitive experiences, unless I show a rate of performance that's above chance when I'm working with a random number generator, I will not be convinced that it's precognition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because memory is selective. We fool ourselves all the time. So just to be clear,
absolutely.
I'm not saying precognition doesn't exist, but you have to be careful when you're doing science to try to, especially because you're dealing with a lot of people who think that you're basically doing pseudoscience, you need to be very rigorous around what you include in your evidence that you present to say precognition is actually happening.
Right.
And so, So
or that cell is dividing in the lab. You have to prove it.
Yeah, so it's not the prominence of an event that makes it difficult. It's the event not being in the lab and not getting recordings of information before the event, right? With 9/11, people say, "Oh, I had a dream" or whatever, but if you didn't get it recorded before, this is why I go on my book tour and I'm telling everyone keep a dream journal because. Keep an intuition journal or a precog journal with all of your dreams and feelings and stuff, because then you can get more convinced of your own abilities.
Right. And I wasn't intending to bring up 9/11, but I did because I did see where there had been this undercurrent ahead of time, which I thought was interesting about that. But when you're talking about premonition and studying premonition, I work with a planet. I was working with the planet long before I started working with people. Unfortunately, the planet does not have a checkbook. So you kind of have to go somewhere else to earn a living. But there are world events, there are natural events that happen in the world that some of us are aware of ahead of time. And the question is where to take that information.
And then whether they're natural world events, that's a different answer than if they're.
Okay. Why is that a different answer?
Yeah.
You mean different answer than politics or people's actions, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything, right? If you happen to know for sure, if you know that someone you know is planning a terrorist strike, your action that you're going to take to try to prevent that terrorist strike is different from the action you're going to take to try to prevent global warming, because those are different, right? I mean, just those are different outcomes with different sequelae.
Right.
So, right, and so it's the same thing if you have scientific evidence that you're a precognitive person, and you continue to have dreams where events in your dreams are occurring, then it would make sense that you would want to alert law enforcement of some kind of impending event that was law enforcement related, but that you would want to work with politicians or change makers with some kind of event that was having to do with needing to change policies, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a political event, I'm talking about knowing in advance when a major earthquake is going to hit and where and the magnitude in the day and not being able to tell anybody.
Right.
And it's
it's very
oh my God, it makes you insane.
Yeah, it actually can make you kind of delusional, and it's I think it's not good for people's mental health. And I get emails from people all the time, not all the time, but like probably a couple times a week, let's say, where people will say, "Hey, I've heard about your work, and I've predicted this and this and this," and I believe them that they have the experience of predicting those things, and they may be totally precognitive. But when they say, "Where can I go?" I say, "Well, that's one of the frustrations of the current situation, is because precognition is considered by most people not to exist. There's no place to go where you can tell this information while people don't think that you're an accomplice."
Right? Yes, right. Among other things, right? Like,
right.
Why believe them, or making yourself look crazy, or taking your time when you can't do anything about a situation. And yet, we're going to coming up on a break here. And when we come back from the break, I want to talk about your focus on science and then your term positive precogs. So hang on. We'll be right back with Julia Mossbridge and the Premonition Code.
Conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Hi, this is New Age Grammy winner Paul Avgerinos. Thanks for listening to OMTimes Radio, and please support my peaceful healing music with a purchase at iTunes, Amazon, or wherever you shop for fine music. Just put my name into the search engine, Paul Avgerinos. A, V like Victor, G like George, E-R-I-N-O-S. You can also visit me at roundskymusic.com. Thanks for listening, and I'm wishing you the brightest of blessings.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz, and my guest today is Dr. Julia Mossbridge, co-author of the Premonition Code, How can Precognition change your life is a question we're talking about today. And it's a hard word to say, Julia, precognition. So I'm going to not say it again for the rest of the show. We'll call it premonition. It's like falling over my words. It's Monday still here, you know. Monday is a day you should just like go from Sunday to Tuesday and skip Mondays in my book. But I'm being weird today, sorry. So here's my question. You're a scientist, Julia, and I love science. I love my car. I love electricity. I love that I'm comfortable enough that I can have a house cat and a dog, and we can have a nice life on the edge of the ocean here in Seattle. I love science, and I'm educated too, and a lot of us are asking this question. Maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of us are asking the question. We're investigating, we're researching this subject here, premonition. This is your thing, and I know there are places in the country where you're really digging into scientific research. But are you at all concerned that the scientific research is actually hampering people's intuition, that bringing people into the lab is scaring them into not being able to connect? Or is that just me? And you can say, Robin, that's just you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all of the lab tests that we can set up, or we have set up so far, are not very similar to the ways people use precognition in their everyday lives. I mean, you're trying to take something that's usually fairly spontaneous, and you're trying to put it in the lab, and that's always difficult. So as a creative scientist, part of the fun of doing that kind of science is trying to do a good job at doing that. And even though I enjoy it and I try to do a good job, I'm still not great at it, right? So it's a difficult task, but it's kind of the only way we can proceed. So it's kind of all we got.
It's the only way you can proceed if you're science, right? If you want to go strictly from science.
Right. And so if I'm a scientist, and I feel that part of my calling here is to try to show other scientists and people who are skeptical of this that this is a real thing, I have to actually do the experiments. And I don't think it makes people worse generally as intuitives. And in fact, the very best precogs that I know are absolutely fine and do well in any conditions, but they're the very exceptions.
So they're not.
Even them have. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask if they're not put off. Sure, everybody does, right? But sure, they're put off a little, but they work through it. So it's a matter of just finding tests that people can work through. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing may be expanding maybe not the definition, but the maybe parameters of science, where a lot of science comes down to, experimentation in the lab or things that you can quantify, and based on a certain mindset. And that mindset is that humans are in charge and the world runs according to how we decide it runs. So is that limiting you? I mean, I know you have to stand up and say, okay, I'm doing research in an area we don't have, specific rules around. We need to figure out what those are and how we can work with them. Is that making sense?
I want to go back to your definition of science as humans are in charge and we understand the rules. I think that definition comes from, it's not your fault that you have that definition, but I think it's inaccurate. It comes from...
I agree it's inaccurate.
Yeah. It comes from the science education in this country, the way science is taught to people, which I find really offensive. I find it... when you
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. when you talk to actual scientists who have been working in the field for at least a decade or so, you recognize that they're at it because they don't know. The whole point of science is we don't know how the world works. The whole point is we're not in charge, and we're basically, we're probing at it with whatever tools we can because we're curious and we're like little children trying to figure out how it works.
Exactly.
And anytime, so any sort of demonstration or any sort of idea that science is anything other than that, I think is just inaccurate, but it's unfortunately upheld by so many of our institutions of learning.
Well, and that's true, and I'm so glad that you said that because, I read I've read several science books. Even recently, I've had several scientists on the show, but years ago, to me, the very definition of true science is, I don't know the answer. Let's go find out. Let's explore.
Sure.
I mean, and that to me is fascinating. That's like not saying, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. Let's go find out. Let's go explore.
Sure.
Let's go learn. And that's the way you really learn. And we pull things in by defining them and saying, well, it can only be that way. And then you miss a lot. You miss maybe everything.
That's right. Well, you miss a lot. And at the same time, when you're playing by the rules of science and trying to understand something, you do have to start with some kind of idea about what could be the explanation based on the data. So
of course,
if
right.
Someone if someone says to you, every day I wake up and my entire room is a different color than it was the day before, you start diving in and saying, well, let's try to figure out, are your eyes changing or is there something externally changing? What's happening?
You need cataract surgery.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, there's all sorts of things that could be going on, and some are experiential and some are physical. And so, it's a discovery process, and that's where the joy is,
Right. Oh, you sound like a fun scientist.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, come on. We got to play, right? We got to have fun. You got to go out there and, let's be Star Trek in the modern age. Okay, so for the people who are here at OMTimes, people are really tapping in, right? Okay, trying to understand their basic intuitive abilities themselves, and you have a definition you call positive precogs. So explain that. Let's hear what you have to say about that.
Sure, yeah. So we made up this thing, positive precogs. Anything alliterative is always helpful. But also the idea is, right? But the idea is that there's a lot of people who are precognitive out there who feel alone and isolated and who don't know what to do with their skills and feel sort of marginalized and don't want to talk about them for fear people will think they're nuts.
Right.
And the idea is,
but I'm just out there, Julia.
Well, I know you don't have that issue, but
well, I do it to a certain extent. It's like, who do I call up when I hear about this? But go ahead.
But we wanted to create a name for something that is just like you might say you're a piano student if you're training to learn piano. Well, what about having something called being a positive precog, where you're training to learn how to use your precognition in a way that's helpful and positive for yourself and for the world. And
perfect.
Just to get it out of the dark, just as like it's a legitimate thing to do. It's a human skill that's been validated scientifically. Now let's build a structure and some ethics and some principles around using it to help the world. And that's the idea behind the positive precog movement.
Okay. And then so people will come into your lab at certain types of people, but also in the book you have suggestions on how people can train themselves, and this is where the audience is really going to get excited. I mean, not to say that you're not already exciting, Julia, but I'm saying they're going to be like, oh my God, I can train myself. And, that's what I do for a living is train people, drag them out on the street and, have them talk to a tree or the wind or whatever. Make it normal, make it everyday kind of stuff because it is.
Correct.
So you have methods of training. So if you're talking to my audience and give them a few tips on how they can just jump in right now and start training themselves from your standpoint as a scientist. See, I'm narrowing the field from your standpoint as a scientist.
Good. Yeah, because there's many ways to train, and all of them have validity in their way, right? Or most of them do. So
in their way, or
in their way, they all have validity in their own way.
Oh, okay. I thought you said in their way. Don't mind me. It's Monday. Go ahead.
Right. So we created this website called thepremonitioncode.com, which is the name of the book. And if you go there and you click on positive precog training, then what you can do is you can sit there all day for free and register after you register, which is just your email address. And then you can use there's an array of images, none of which are sexual or violent, that you're trying to predict. So random number generator is choosing the next image, and you're just trying to predict what it is. And the website walks you through it. The book walks you through the steps. I've got courses at different levels, some retreats like at the Bahamas or in Scottsdale.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, at Conscious Life, I'll be doing a workshop. But then I've also got, free online resources for anyone who just wants to just go check it out. So there's just an array of ways to work with the site, but also to work with your own intuition in general. And I think probably the most important part of that website, besides the positive precog training, which is the number one most important part, is the community part, which is about that we have a Telegram group for people who are taking precognition seriously and working towards trying to feel like what they're doing is they're not tricking themselves. That's what I mean.
Right.
And so that's really important. And you need community when you go through this because everyone goes through some slumps. Everyone goes through difficult times.
It's called life, right?
It's called life.
It's called life.
So and then also the events page, I guess I should point people towards, yes.
Right. Okay. So people can go to the premonitioncode.com. Is that the website?
Yes.
Okay. So they can go there and they can take the test, and I'm not quite sure random number generator. I mean, I had to go back and take a whole bunch of math before I went to MBA school, and okay, do you say words like that? And I'm like, okay, I'm tuning out now, but
can I explain
that's
that?
just me.
I don't want you to tune out. I'll explain it.
Okay.
The reason I use a random number generator for the site is that when you're trying to use this skill of precognition, and this is not intuition in general, this is precognition in particular, if you don't have random events that you're trying to predict, you could get yourself in trouble thinking, basically you start to train yourself in a certain way. You start to think, oh, I got that one right, and I should just keep doing whatever I did to get me that one. Trial.
Okay.
The problem is if it's not truly random, you could be using clairvoyance or telepathy or anything else or some other skill to pick out the next event. And so a random number generator is, what happens is you go through these steps that the website takes you through, and then the random number generator, when you're ready and you're done and you've already registered what your vote is or what your pick is, then it selects the image. And so you have no chance, no one on the planet knows what the image is you're trying to predict before it appears.
Okay.
That's the idea of using a random number generator.
All right. Okay. So there you go. There's that. But then you said, well, you want to rule out clairvoyance, seeing other intuitive abilities, and just focus on premonition. But all of those intuitive abilities play a role in that, at least in my experience.
That's right.
So why are you screening them out?
I'm screening them out because what I want to do is find a group of people who, I mean, it's totally legitimate to study them and to not screen them out. I'm screening them out on purpose here because my goal is to find a group of people who are excellent at precognition in particular, because I think that's my calling in the world, because if we can get excellent at precognition as a culture, then what that means is events that no one has in mind, no one on the planet knows that they're going to happen, like something like 9/11, for instance, that if we get excellent at precognition, we can predict those things. But if we're relying on things like telepathy or clairvoyance, which are present time things, we're not going to be any good at, you see what I mean? Only precognition can predict a 9/11.
Yeah. Or, well, yeah.
Well, that's not true. I mean, you could have telepathy with the terrorists, but that's much scarier, and I'd rather use...
Yeah, I don't want to be doing that. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you want to keep the bad guys in the bad guy category and, you know, not run into them mentally.
Not work with them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're talking about, you had an interesting section in your book about time travel and premonition. And I know my audience would be interested in that. And I have my own questions on that. So what you're, you know, is looking over my notes before the show, and you're talking about maybe people in the future are already affecting current events because they knew what was going to happen if they didn't change it or something. I mean, I'm extrapolating from the conversation. So talk to us about premonition and time travel.
Sure.
And we're going to run into a break here, so hang on. If we run into a break, we'll be right back. But start the conversation here.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, don't, hang on, okay? Hang on, we'll be right back after the break. We're starting early.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hi, this is recording artist and composer Yuval Ran, inviting you to a voyage through the chakras, a new double album of guided meditations to transform your life, a sublime musical medicine for nourishing inner peace and reaching to your higher virtues. Get it now at metamindfulnessmusic.com, METTA mindfulnessmusic.com.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Practical Intuitive Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World. It's Robin Fritz, and my special guest today is Dr. Julia Mossbridge, co-author of the Premonition Code. And first, I want to thank my producer for popping in that commercial a little bit early so Julia and I could talk about time travel here in the few minutes we have remaining. But Julia, I want to bring up an example, and then I want you to tell me about time travel and people in the future coming back and people. Oh, sounds like Star Trek. But, okay, so one of the things they do is, you may want to call it paranormal, I don't, but clearing houses of stuck energies. And I have a friend who's very intuitive, and she had a ghost in her house, and the ghost was touching her, and she was like, I'm not liking that. And so we decided to clear the house. And one of the things they do in that, besides talk with the house and find out what the house thinks, is talk to the ghost. So she's going, you're the ghost. And I'm like, no, we're not the ghost. You're the ghost. And she's like, no, you're the ghost. And I'm like, well, we're not getting anywhere here. And I'm like, why does she think we're the ghosts? So then I explained to her, well, I don't know what year it was, but let's say it was 2011 or something. Anyway, this is 2011, and I'm talking to you from Seattle, and my friend is talking to you from her house here, and the year is 2011. What year is it where you are? That was the only thing I could think of, and she said 1947.
Oh,
and we're
well,
like,
then that makes sense.
Oh, gosh, why aren't there scientists on this phone call with us? And I was like, there were so many questions I wanted to ask her. And we was kind of narrowed it a little bit to, like, I mean, you could ask questions like, when did World War II end? Was World War II relevant? All of those kinds of questions where you could actually pinpoint where this person actually really was when you're talking to them. I mean, you could even talk like multiple Earth dimensions, right? I mean, you could get really involved. But we were talking about one little house that was over 100 years old. And eventually I realized she was dying, and we helped her, and I ended it. I mean, you got to be ethical, right? Somebody's dying. You could quit asking them questions about what year they're in. But that was kind of time travel in one way, I suppose. And then a lot of people talk about time is just like fluid. So, and I'm like, okay, yesterday was yesterday, today is today, and tomorrow's tomorrow. And don't get me any more confused than I am already. It works for me. It works for me. And it doesn't work for me for everybody to say time is all here and all past, presents, and futures are in one place. Because I'm a practical person. I need to help my clients and myself get through the day and be the best that we can be until the day we die, and then going on from there. But what do you look at time travel and how to study that, and how, I mean, you're talking about people in the future affecting current events.
Well, let's see. I think you're referring to the part of the book where it's a question-answer section, and Theresa, my co-author, is asking me questions about time travel. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. So that part of the book is really speculative.
Exactly.
And yeah. And I'm super fascinated by time travel, and I have since I was a kid. And I think that the first step toward, in science fiction, time travel is always physical, but it's physical plus mental. Not always, but in most cases in science fiction, you have a person, and they and their memories and their experience and everything are going back or forward in time.
Right.
Okay. So that's how we sort of think of time travel as the whole shebang. Physical, informational, emotional, mental, everything is experiential. Everything is going back in time. The person remembers where they came from. For the most part, they have a new experience where they're going. They retain that experience.
Well, right. We're also talking fiction, though. I mean, you can't tell a story in somebody's head and be really interesting.
Right. So that's fiction, but that's where we get our ideas about when we talk about time travel. Yeah. Generally what we're drawing on, right? And so I think eventually we will at one point achieve that. I don't see a reason why not. But I think it will start with mental time travel, which is the easiest form, which I think you experienced in that story, where the thoughts of someone else were able to be communicated. You actually communication. Right. You know, if you take your story at face value, like who knows, someone could have had a hallucination or another, but take it at face value. If it's the case that you were having this conversation with someone from 1947, was it? Then
something like that. We were two of us having a conversation with her. Yeah.
Right. So that's you know, it's either group hallucination or some kind of mental time travel, and I think that's the first form of time travel, and I think precognition is an example of mental time travel. Certainly memory is an example of mental time travel.
Right.
So we know we have that. And then after that is going to, I think, this is my guess, is the way it will evolve, is we will start to be able to do physical time travel with very small objects or particles, like photons or things.
Right.
And I'm working on a photon time travel experiment as a result of this conviction I have. And then, but I mean, it might not be me, it might be someone else.
Well, that's why we keep you around, Julia, to do your interesting experiences, right?
Right. I hope so. And please keep me around. But I really think that's how it's going to progress. So then we'll have small object time travel. Then we'll have larger object time travel, but not alive. And then we'll have living object time travel like plants. But we won't know about how to combine it with mental time travel until later, right? So I think that's
who knows?
Part is combined. Yeah. So I think the trickiest part is going to be combining mental and physical aspects of time travel, because right now we clearly don't even know how in the present time mental and physical aspects are combined. So, you know, we've got our work cut out for us.
Well, you can experiment, or you can fall over things like I do on a daily basis. I don't always recommend that approach, but it is interesting and intriguing, and I think whether you're the scientist coming at it or you're me and you're in a client session and somebody's telling you you're the ghost and you're going like, okay, come on, let's figure this out here, is being open-minded enough and being well-read and educated enough that there are a number of things that you can draw on to define your experience and learn and grow from it. And that would apply whether you're a scientist or whatever you are, a fiction writer or a politician, right? We have to learn from our experiences and grow from it.
I don't think we have any. I don't even think it's an effort. I mean, I don't think it's that we have a choice. I mean, I think you could try not to learn and change from your experiences, and you would have a really hard time doing that because the brain is built to learn and grow from experience. So I don't know.
It seems to me a lot of people are really blocking themselves from growing these days. But I don't know what that is.
In the direction that
going in different directions is one thing, but actually not growing is what a lot of people seem to be choosing. And I don't know. Is that fear? I don't know. I don't know what that is. But that's off the topic here. Yeah. It could be lots of things.
In a direction. We might not be able to see the direction that they're growing, and that might not be externally visible.
That's right. That's right. So we have a few minutes left here, and we have just so much that we could talk about here. But if you were encouraging people to just in their daily lives, just learn to trust, learn to evaluate their premonitions, learn to keep a record of them so they know when something's happening, learn to distinguish between a great question in your book, how do you distinguish between premonition and an anxiety attack? What kind of advice would you give to our listeners? I mean, when I teach people intuition, sometimes, especially if you're a person whose intuition runs towards knowing, you're going to know something and you need to learn to act on that. That's how our ancestors survived. They knew something was sneaking up on them. It's to tell people to relax, around their intuition, because I tell them there was once two branches of the human race. One was intuitive, the other got eaten, right? So here we are. Here we are all having this basic ability. if you saw some event coming naturally, if it's a terrifying event, that would trigger an anxiety attack. And that's, again, you're running off into being human and having all kinds of things happening and not being able to validate it scientifically. But in everyday life, we need to get an idea of what's coming at us if we can. So what advice are you going to offer my listeners to learning to use their premonition as a life skill?
Well, I think normalizing it is really important. So
excellent, right?
If you only have a premonition every so often and you can't really trust it, then it really can cause an anxiety attack because you don't know how to work with it. You don't treat it as something normal. You treat it as something crazy or something, oh no, I really have to do something about this. And you don't notice the signs. I mean, you haven't learned to sort out the difference between a premonition and a paranoid thought, right?
Right.
And that is really important. One of the biggest differences between an actual premonition and a paranoid thought is that premonition usually comes with a calm sense of knowing.
Right.
So a paranoid thought is often obsessive and like, I don't know if this will happen, but I'm scared it will. That could be obsessive or paranoid and not knowing. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I can tell you that's not the same thing. It's not the same experience. And, even when it's really negative, I mean, I had a woman who came to one of my talks who told me about the reason she was buying my book was for a friend of hers who had a sense of knowing as soon as her daughter opened a box at her birthday party that this was the dress that her daughter would be buried in. And it just came to her when she saw the dress. And it was, in fact, true. 6 months later, her daughter died of a brain tumor.
Oh God!
But it didn't. But she just knew it was true, and the knowing made her go to the doctor and say, "What's going on with my daughter?" And it allowed her to have the last 6 months of life with her daughter that she wouldn't have had if she hadn't known, and if she had been a paranoid thought that then overwhelmed her and she couldn't be present. So I think
she
it's a very
researched
it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Researched it and. Well, I just think it's a very different experience to have a calm sense of knowing than it is to have a paranoid thought. So,
I agree with that. I remember waking up on Christmas Day, 2011, and my back was turned, and my oldest dog coughed 4 times, very softly, and it went through me like a bolt. It was like, oh my God, she's dying. And this is a breed that's susceptible to heart disease, but she never had a symptom. By the end of the week, we had found hemangiosarcoma. But we had 6 weeks together, which we would not have had if I had not listened to that bolt that went through me that said, wow, something is really wrong here. And taken her in and investigated it, because that cancer happens so fast. It just is there, present. And I guess so I would like people to point to you and say, here's someone who's doing the research that'll give us more information on these skill sets that we have that we're not developing.
I hope so.
And encourage you to continue to do it, because besides having a great sense of humor, you know what you're talking about, and that is important. And you're open-minded and you're curious, and that to me is the hallmark of a great scientist. That curiosity that keeps turning over the rocks to find out what's coming next.
Yeah,
so
I think I really appreciate your kind words, and I hope all those things are true. And I really appreciate your work you're doing in the world to help.
Yeah, we're all doing what we can in the world. In my case, stumbling over things and going, okay, let's find out about that. But again, I want to thank Dr. Julia Mossbridge for being with us today. Again, Julia, tell people how they can find you again, as we are at the end of the hour.
Sure, absolutely. ThePremonitionCode.com or MossbridgeInstitute.com.
Awesome. So I want to thank Dr. Julia Mossbridge for being with us today. You are welcome to come back anytime, my friend. If you think you can live through another laughter-filled interview session. But it is an important topic, And I am so grateful that you joined us today. So thank you. And to everyone out there, we're closing down first show of the year. Upcoming shows, we have a whole bunch of things I'm talking about this year. What's really going on in the afterlife, love and relationships next week with Kaylin Rosenberg, questions from listeners, from anything from the human-animal bond to what's really going on in the world, and we're covering that this year. So questions, comments, email me at robin@robinfritz.com. That's ROBYNFRITZ.com. I do personal and business intuition, mediumship, animal communication, space clearing, past life and between life regression as a soul regression hypnotherapist, and spiritual journeys, energy healing with the crystal Fallon. So as we close today, hands across your heart, cross your hands over your heart. Breathe in, feel that healthy energy, clearing that, getting grounded back into your body. Connection to the crystal Fallon tends to open up that crown chakra and make you dizzy. So getting re-grounded into your body. Thank you for joining me. Let me know how I can help you. Let me know what questions you have. And we will see you again next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.